All right, my name is Cody Bell, and today we're going to focus on the process and skills of listening for a team and how to create a better team culture, what have it, through that proper listening. So why is that important? We're going to look at the companies, military units, families, whatever team you have, as well as a future team, or being a future leader if you're not one already. The process of listening can help develop each one of these factors, each one of these subsets, into a better team, into a better military unit, a better family, more cohesive, whatever team involves with you, whatever team you have today, as well as any future teams. If you become a leader, if you're not already, how do I incorporate that listening process into creating that successful team or culture? This will be kind of used back and forth as we go through, because that's really what we're trying to develop with these better listening skills. So you're a member of one, if not multiple, of these units. If you're not right now, you will continue to be so as you progress throughout your life. So you can be a successful leader, a successful listener, if you follow these principles that we're going to discuss today. We're going to look at culture and perspectives, listening in its proper form, as well as nonverbal cues. Talk about elements for communication process, as well as some language and communication barriers that you may come upon, and how to defeat them. And strategies for healthy relationships and theories. Now, throughout all these, we're going to talk about how we implement these into your team and how it actually connects to listening. So maybe a little bit thrown off on the actual connection there. Don't worry, we'll go through all those as we go through this. We can't just implement any of these factors into our team if we don't first understand who our team is and where they come from. That's where we need to understand the culture and perspectives that those members have. So culture is from the Latin cultus, which means to care. So that should be a good start for your team. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to care about them, I'm going to pay attention to who they are, what their needs are, what their wants, what their desires are, then I'm able to be a better leader or just overall team member if I can care for them. We're looking at identifiers, sensitivity, and the display factors as we go through. So identifiers are going to be, who are they? What do they want? So I'm looking at, all right, are they male, are they female, what's their age range, what religion do they come from, what are their demographics overall. That's what I'm looking at for my identifiers. I can go into sensitivity, so with the sensitivity, I'll make sure I can culturally assimilate. That way we are not going to create barriers overall just through the culture aspects of this portion. And then display is, how do I cue someone into this culture and make sure they're actually a part of this team. This is the team I'm focused on as I go through. And we're talking about, all right, cool, yeah, it's culture, how does that affect your listening process? It's a good question. And one thing to look at is, if I understand who my team members are, what they want, what's important to them, and how to cue them in, I can really do that by listening. And once I understand how to listen properly and listen, like I said, their wants and needs, I'm able to bring them into this culture, this family, this group member, whatever it is. And now they are part of one because I can listen to what they need. I can listen to what they're sensitive about or what is maybe going to affect their ability to be a successful member in this team. And I can bring them in as I go through. One example of that was the Munchkin boat crew. Admiral McRaven talked about it in a couple of his speeches as he went through. So he was a Navy SEAL officer. He talked about this group of people that were from all over the country: Polish American, Italian Americans, African Americans, a couple kids from the Midwest. So a group of individuals from throughout the country, from multiple different cultures in the world. They were really short too. That's why they're hence the Munchkin name. But they were better at everybody, or better at every event than everybody, because they were able to work together and they would listen to their boat leader. And as soon as he gave a command, they could properly go through and communicate and get their mission done faster and better than everyone else. And by doing so, they built a successful listening communication process where he would say something in time. They would give Raj, good to go, let's do it, knock it out, and then later on during a debrief or anything else, they're able to say, hey, this worked, this doesn't, and they're actually listening to each other. They're listening to what their boat leader is instructing, and the boat leader listens to the feedback that they later give. That way they create a successful team as they work. And then perspectives. So perspectives can be the way you see something. Something to look at is with students, they'll have a positive response, students who are given a positive response, I should say, during some portion of feedback, have a better positive outcome, a more beneficial outcome, because they are given that positive perception of how they're doing as they go through. So these students were seen as, hey, half the students were told, good job, you're showing your grades that are doing well, and the other students were not seeing that. And they saw with the students who are basically put on a higher level, that more beneficial feedback, they were able to have a more positive outlook as they went through. Something else to look at is the over-communication of your listening. So you shouldn't just go through and be like, yep, got it, yeah, sure. So what I'm doing right there is I'm not really showing you that I'm listening. So we talk about how perception is reality. So as I go through, if I'm looking you in the eyes, and I'm nodding, and I'm not blinking, I'm not distracted by other factors, I'm over-communicating that I am listening to you, that I am paying attention to you, and that is going to work for the relationship that we're building here. So how does that apply to the team? So with listening, how to apply this and implement it. If I understand who they are and where they come from, and I'm understanding what they are seeing, what I'm seeing, I can mesh it all together. Now I can listen, I can give better feedback to them, because they will be more responsive to see that, one, I'm listening, and I'm giving them that positive feedback, and two, they're starting to see, all right, it's not just an individual, it's not just he is doing that or I am doing that, is together we are doing this. All because one member decided to start listening to the other instead of just having an arbitrary conversation go by. So something important to keep in mind as you go through this, expression is going to be key in this. So once you understand who your team is, where they come from, you can start to use some of the different listening tactics. So what does listening in its proper form look like? It looks like active listening. So active listening is going to be my body stance. So I'm not just going to stand here, arms crossed, like I'm the one in charge, even if I am. What I want to do is make sure, like I talked about, eyes unblinking forward, maybe eyebrows arched up, and then an expression to show that I'm concentrated and I'm focused on that speaker, whoever that member is. That way I can properly listen as I go through it. Appropriate responses to this. So just because you're asking questions does not always mean you're giving the appropriate response. Sometimes you need to avoid any interruptions, so let that person get through, and then you can give feedback after that, instead of just going through and speaking your mind right away. As well as if someone is delivering bad news, embrace the messenger. That is part of that. Listening is proper performance, embracing the messenger. Hey, I heard you, and I understand that you are not the one delivering this, or the one who is ordering this, what have you, but you are the one delivering it to me. So we're not going all 300, right? Cake in the well. We're going to embrace that messenger and make sure they understood, hey, I hear you, I'm listening to you, and this is how I'm going to respond as we go through. Again, not a Spartan kick. The 5 stages that we're going to look at are going to be the receiving, understanding, remembering, evaluating, and responding. And listening goes into all of these. So obviously, number 1, receiving. Listening is a part of that, right? But listening going to understanding may not make as much sense until you're going, okay, if someone is properly listening, and they are understanding what I'm saying, and with that proper listening, that active listening, now they're evaluating what I'm saying, and remembering what I'm saying. They're holding on to it and then evaluating it. And then because of the initial proper response of receiving, they can now regurgitate and respond in the proper manner because of that proper form. Something else that ties into that are going to be nonverbal cues. So nonverbal cues, we saw with another study, is that proximity to that person develops empathy for them, and they develop empathy, the listener develops empathy, and they're able to better understand their situation as you go through. So we want that connection with our students, with our kids, with our coworkers, with our parents, with our team members, whatever it is. We want that connection with that proximity by these nonverbal cues that we're close to them, and we're showing them with our active listening that we are actually paying attention to them and they are being understood. So the body movement. So I sit here and I walk super fast and I'm doing something like this. Now I'm showing, all right, maybe I'm impatient, something else is on my mind, but if I stand here, I stand the whole time. Like I said, if I stand like this, it's going to be kind of awkward. So every once in a while, I'll take a walk over here. 1, I'm grabbing your eyes and making sure that you're still listening to me. And number 2, now I can move around. I can see, all right, I'm focused, but I'm not being overly distracted with my body movements as I go through. So perception is going to be very important as we as we dive through this. What is the perception of that person who's the audience member who's listening, or that person who's the speaker? So how does this apply to the team? Well, if you are properly listening and you're using correct nonverbal cues, then you're using the listening process how it's supposed to be done, and then your team is able to better be improved. And we'll go through a couple examples on some past experiences we've seen with this. When you properly listen to your team, you're able to see a better connection, and they're able to actually understand, all right, if they listen to me, then there are chances they will continue to listen to me, so I can continue to speak up and create good ideas as I develop with this team. So if we understand these two forms, the proper listening form as well as the nonverbal cues, we can start to work on the communication process itself. So the elements for the communication process, I need a source, and I need a receiver. So I'll be the source if you're the receiver. What am I talking about though? It'll be the message. The channel will be through this video, that way you can actually understand. And the environment and the context are going to be very important as well. So the environment right now, just in an auditorium, and the context is talking about listening. I'm making sure those ones apply if I'm talking about, hey, we're going to talk about building fires. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense here because one, we're not in the environment that's appropriate for that, unless we're going to go down the building. And two, the context does not really apply. If I'm talking about listening, then I go into fire, I'm going back and forth. So that doesn't really match as we go through. But overall, the number one important piece that you need to pay attention to for this is feedback. So feedback is going to be one of the key factors of that communication process, one of the key elements. So what we've seen with feedback is that improper feedback spoils the whole communication process. What I mean by that is, if I'm going through, right, we just talked about the 5 stages, that last one being responding. So that improper feedback has been shown to spoil the whole communication process. And now that exchange, that relationship, or that moment at least, is a failure in terms of the communication process. This feedback is showing that we are listening, that whatever the message was that the source gave to the receiver is not fully paid attention to and listened to. So the receiver, if I went through and I talked about listening for 10, 15 minutes, then the audience member was not able to regurgitate to some sort of standard that I have at least, or that I've developed, then there is something wrong with that feedback there. Maybe the feedback is, hey, you're really boring to listen to, and I don't like it. That could be a form of feedback too. But feedback is going to be very important in that listening process, because if I cannot go through and properly listening to that person, it's going to be difficult to actually have that feedback for them at the end. So again, in terms when we look at team-wise, feedback is crucial, just like the Munchkin crew that we talked about earlier. They were able to give feedback to the boat leaders so they can improve and become even faster, even stronger the next day, and the next day. That's something your team needs to constantly do, is listen and give feedback after. Some of the language and communication barriers that we're going to look at. So dialects versus language. So if we have a dialect, a Southern comes in here from Georgia, starts talking like this, man, can't really understand them. It's going to be a little different in terms of how I listen. And again, when I talk about my nonverbal cues that I'm giving, I still need to show that I don't really care about the dialect or what language they're speaking. I care about the message overall, and I'm listening to the message. That's my key focus. The impression we're giving, we talked about the body stances, so if my arms crossed, my eyes are averted the whole time, versus if I'm looking there, I'm intent, and we talk about with our active listening procedures as they go through. So making sure that if these are negative, these just kind of down here, but if these are negative, we can recognize them and get past them by incorporating a positive or a reaction to those negative barriers or communication barriers as we go through. So what we'll look at is, all right, if someone has an accent, I just need to clarify a couple things to go through. But overall, I need to pay attention and hear the message and not just hear the words that they're saying said a little funny. I need to actually listen to the message. So I can understand, all right, this is the proper communication process, and these are some barriers I might see, and I'm able to listen and get those out of the way and focus on, all right, this is the process it should go. This is 1, 2, 3, ABC, whatever it is, and then I can avoid these barriers as I go through. These barriers are going to stop your team when it comes to that listening portion and that feedback. Those are things we want to avoid as we go through. So we do identify those barriers. Now we can look at, all right, how do we defeat them? We know what they are, how do we defeat them? Active listening. All right, we've talked about a handful of times. So what Professor Wager saw is that with active listening, participants who received active listening compared to, so half got active listening, half got just kind of like a casual, a bipartisan feedback where they're just like, yep, you did this and this. It wasn't actually fully, all right, this is your feedback. So it was half and half active listening with full responses versus kind of a half portioned response. What we saw is those who got the active listening were more socially attracted to the other member of that conversation, as well as just more satisfied with the conversation. So when you're going through and you're actually listening to someone, you're giving proper responses, and the other person who is listening or who is speaking, both members are more socially attracted to each other, which socially attracted me, all right, now I'm able to feel more comfortable around that person and work with them better. That is our goal for our team that we want, is having them socially attracted to each other. Listening early and often, as I go through, as soon as they start the conversation, man, my focus is on you, and I'm not focused on me anymore. It's all about what you're saying. I am properly listening. And we talked earlier, over-communicate your expectations. So use your body language to show what you are trying to show to the receiver. So as I'm going through and I'm listening, I should have my eyebrows raised, when we talked about with our body stance, but I should show them this is exactly what I'm expecting for you when you're speaking to me. So over-communicating our expectations can be super important as we go through. So different theories that we've seen. So Daniel Coyle, an author, has this theory about how successful teams are formed. And his theory is that they are formed through disaster. They're formed through disaster. He talks about how Toy Story, after Toy Story was made for Pixar, back in 1998, they formed through disaster because as they went through, every type of sequel they tried to make was terrible. The characters were flat, there was nothing in it that actually invoked any sort of feeling that the original Toy Story is. But eventually they went through and they scrapped everything at the 11th hour and they rewrote it because they used their brain trust, which is basically like a Socratic seminar with feedback. And they listened to the other people in the office, and now they're able to come up with the beloved Toy Story 2. The SEALs did the same thing. Back in 1983, there was an invasion going to Grenada. The plan was, all right, send them in, they're going to parachute in, they're going to get into the ocean, swim to shore, and they're going to take over the radio tower, simple, clean. But because there was improper communication and combined with improper planning, we were able to see that 4 SEALs tragically drowned because they were overloaded with gear, they were dropped in during a storm, and there was not a successful communication process for that team. So, in turn, just like we started with Pixar, is, all right, disaster happened. We lost 4 members. Now we need to fix our communication process. Now we need to understand feedback goes up and down. I listen to the people below me, and they listen to me as I go through. So it's a two-way street there when it comes to listening and feedback for that team. And now we see the SEALs as one of the most formidable forces in our military around the world. And then the communication accommodation theory. So as a speaker, how do I accommodate my audience? What do I do to make sure that audience is fully understanding that they're listening? So something I just do personally is I look at, if I had an auditorium full of students, I would look at them, ask each one depending on how many there are, a question. I would accommodate my style to make sure they know that they are being paid attention to. Even though I'm the one speaking, I'm paying attention to, all right, how are they listening? I'm thinking about the listening process as a speaker. So I'm accommodating how I'm speaking based off of the result that I want. And these tie hand in. So active listening, over communicating expectations. We just talked about how that can create a successful team, as well as how this, the cultural formation through disaster or accommodation theory, how those kind of impact you. So if I as a speaker can accommodate and adjust their listening process, then I'm able to better understand the process in a whole, and now I can accommodate towards my team members, and we build a more successful team overall as we go through. Okay, so that's our goal, right? The art of listening is, it starts with understanding who that culture is and what culture you're trying to build. So when we talk about that culture and the different perspectives of our team, we need to understand, okay, who is it, what do they want, and how do I show them that I'm willing to push that way? If I can't do it right now, how do I show them through my listening that I'm able to push them there? So with that listening portion again, we're listening to who they are, we're listening to what they want, and how to move them on, as well as listening in its proper form, active listening with our proper nonverbal cues. So we're going through using proper body movement, proper gestures, and really showing that we are listening to their expectations, and we are listening to that process to make them better. Because that is the process we looked at next, was that communication process and any barriers that may have gotten in the way of that. So with our communication process, we have our 5 stages, and the most important one that we want to understand is that feedback, because that shows that we were properly listening. So we have good feedback, now we're already showing through assimilation that we had a proper listening portion of that receiving portion at the beginning. And just trying to defeat any of the barriers, and looking at the different strategies for healthy relationships, as well as theories that we have. So as I go through, I need to make sure that maybe not the disastrous event forming my good team, but using my active listening, using my nonverbal cues, using everything basically we talked about before is our strategy and a beneficial form to listen. And our theory is that if we properly listen to someone, our team will get stronger. Whether it is through some sort of a mess up, maybe it doesn't have to be a disaster if someone passes away. Maybe it's some event where we fail. It's okay to fail as long as we listen to each other and we listen to the feedback that we get so we can improve. That's what we need to look at with that team. So overall, this is something that you can apply no matter where you are, no matter what position you are. Because if you can listen properly to your boss, even if you're the lowest level, you're the garbage man, whatever it is, you can listen to them. Now they are seeing that you're listening and you're able to give proper feedback. But then as you go through, when time is appropriate. If you have kids and you listen to your kids, now you're able to better understand them. If you have students, the same thing, whatever it is, you can apply listening to improve your team, whatever capacity that team holds. You can use that feedback, you can use that listening process to properly improve upon your team there. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Listening purposes, that'll be all. Thank you very much.